Here is scene 1 expanded, with no heading, written in the same dramatic tone. The day had dragged on longer than usual, and Ibrahim Traoré rubbed his temples as he stepped out of his glass-walled office. The building was nearly empty, computers off, chairs pushed in, lights dimmed, yet one familiar figure still moved quietly through the corridor. Samuel. Always Samuel. He watched the man finish stacking delivery reports, his movements steady but slow, like someone whose strength had been stretched too thin for too long. Samuel's shirt, once blue, had faded to a dull gray, the collar frayed. His shoes were worn down at the heels. Ibrahim had noticed these things before, but today something inside him refused to look away. As Samuel clocked out, his eyes flickered nervously toward the exit. No greeting, no good night, no lingering chat with colleagues. He slipped out as if the world outside demanded him. A strange intuition tugged at Ibrahim. After years of leading hundreds of employees, he had learned the difference between a man going home and a man running somewhere. He followed him into the parking lot but kept far enough to not be noticed. The evening breeze carried the scent of dust and car exhaust, but Samuel moved quickly, clutching a small backpack to his chest as though it protected something precious. Instead of turning toward the bus stop, he took a sharp left, heading into the older part of the city. Ibrahim hesitated. This wasn't his business. He wasn't the type to pry into personal lives. But something about Samuel's hunched shoulders, the urgency in his steps, pushed Ibrahim's feet forward. Street by street, he tailed him at a careful distance. Samuel crossed busy roads without looking up, passed food stalls without glancing at them, ignored the noise of children playing near broken fences. There was a heaviness in his posture, a quiet storm swirling inside him. The neighborhoods grew poorer the deeper they went. Streetlights flickered weakly, peeling paint hung from old apartment walls, and the smell of damp concrete replaced the city's usual scent of coffee and gasoline. Ibrahim's chest tightened as he realized Samuel had been making this journey every night, silently, unnoticed, unspoken. Finally, Samuel stopped in front of a crumbling building with shattered windows and a rusted metal door barely clinging to its frame. He looked around cautiously, as if afraid someone might see him. Then he slipped inside. Ibrahim swallowed, his heart pounding without explanation. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Against every instinct that told him to respect privacy, he stepped closer and pushed the door open just enough to follow the man he had trusted for years, unaware that what waited behind the next hallway would shake him to the core. Here is scene 2 expanded, with no heading, continuing seamlessly from the tone and emotion of the previous part. The hallway Samuel entered was dim and narrow, lit only by a single flickering bulb that buzzed like an exhausted fly. The walls were stained with age, patched in places with cardboard and tape. Ibrahim moved carefully, placing each footstep softly, unsure why he felt like an intruder in a place he had never seen. Samuel walked with familiarity, weaving past broken doors and discarded furniture. When he reached the last apartment on the left, he paused. Ibrahim watched as Samuel closed his eyes for a brief moment, inhaling deeply, the way a man prepares himself before facing something heavy. Then he knocked twice, gently. A small voice immediately answered, "Papa." The door opened not more than a few inches. A girl, no older than 5, peeked out with wide, tired eyes. When she saw Samuel, her face burst into a smile so bright it cut through the gloom surrounding the building. She threw her arms around his waist, clinging to him as though he were the only safe place she knew. Inside, 2 other children sat on a thin mattress, a boy around 10, trying to help his younger brother with homework illuminated by a tiny battery-powered lamp. The air was cold, carrying the scent of damp walls and the faint bitterness of hunger. Samuel sat down, exhaling with quiet exhaustion. He opened his backpack and slowly pulled out a loaf of bread, just one. The children's eyes widened, as though he had produced a feast. "I'm sorry," Samuel murmured softly. "This is all I could get today. But tomorrow I'll bring something more." The oldest boy shook his head quickly. "Papa, it's okay. We understand. You work hard." His words were brave, but Ibrahim saw the truth in their hollow cheeks, their trembling hands, their eyes that held more maturity than childhood should allow. As Samuel broke the loaf into 4 uneven pieces, always giving the largest portion to his children, something inside Ibrahim twisted sharply. Samuel didn't eat his share. He pretended to chew as he watched his children wolf down their pieces delightedly. Ibrahim's eyes stung. This man, who never complained, who never asked for favoritism, who showed up early and left late, was carrying a mountain on his back while feeding crumbs to himself so his children could survive. When Samuel reached out to wipe crumbs from his daughter's face, his hand trembled, not from weakness alone, but from love so fierce it hurt to witness. And in that quiet, cramped room, Ibrahim felt a lump rise in his throat. This was not just poverty. This was a father battling life with everything he had, and losing. The sight hit Ibrahim like a blow, heavy and unforgettable. For the first time in years, tears blurred his vision, slipping down his cheeks before he could wipe them away. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't been prepared for this. He had only meant to follow an employee. But instead, he had walked straight into a truth that would change him forever. Here's Scene 3 expanded, continuing the story seamlessly without a heading. Ibrahim stayed by the doorway, frozen, afraid that any sound might shatter this fragile world Samuel had built for his children. But as he watched, he realized something else. The father's resilience was almost sacred. Despite the tattered surroundings, the children's laughter filled the room, bright and fleeting, like sunlight through a storm. Samuel's eyes, though tired, glimmered with something Ibrahim had never expected: unwavering love. Samuel finally turned toward the children, crouching to their level. "Finish your pieces quickly," he said gently, "then we can read a story before bed." The children cheered softly, running to fetch their worn storybooks from a corner where the pages were bent and corners torn. Ibrahim noticed the frayed blankets, the peeling paint, the single bulb that cast long shadows, and yet, in the midst of all of it, there was warmth, a warmth born of love, not comfort. Samuel reached into his pocket and handed each child a small coin, barely enough to buy a treat, and the children's eyes sparkled. They counted the coins with care, whispered plans of what they would do with them, and laughed together as if money, like hardship, was only a fleeting obstacle they could overcome with imagination. Ibrahim's chest ached as he watched. He had seen wealth, influence, and power, but none of it had ever hit him this hard. The emptiness of his own life, the sterile luxury of his office, the meaningless comforts he had long taken for granted, all of it struck him with sudden shame. Here was a man who had almost nothing, yet gave everything, and yet he never asked for acknowledgement or pity. Tears blurred Ibrahim's vision as Samuel gently tucked his children in. The smallest one rested her head against Samuel's chest, and he held her as if he were holding his own heart. Ibrahim's breath caught in his throat. How had he missed this? How had someone like Samuel, loyal, kind, and steadfast, been living under such invisible strain while he, the boss, remained blind? Samuel finally straightened, brushing crumbs from his shirt. He looked exhausted, his eyes heavy, but there was a quiet pride in them. Ibrahim realized the man was a hero in the truest sense, not for fame, not for accolades, but for love, sacrifice, and relentless courage. The sound of a creaking floorboard beneath Ibrahim's feet made him freeze. Samuel's head snapped toward the doorway, alarm flashing in his eyes. Ibrahim pressed a finger to his lips, stepping back. The moment was fragile. He didn't want to be discovered, but he also couldn't look away. Not now. Not ever. Samuel turned back to his children and whispered, "Sleep well, my loves. Tomorrow will be better." And as Ibrahim watched him close the door softly behind him, he realized that this small, battered apartment held a strength far greater than anything in his polished office. For the first time, Ibrahim truly understood sacrifice, love, and resilience. And he knew, he could not leave without doing something to change Samuel's life. Here's Scene 4 expanded, continuing the story seamlessly without a heading. The next morning, Ibrahim could hardly concentrate. He sat behind his polished desk, but his mind was miles away in that small, dim apartment where Samuel's children had laughed despite their hunger. The city's sounds, honking cars, ringing phones, busy footsteps, felt hollow compared to the quiet courage he had witnessed the night before. He realized that he could no longer remain a passive observer. Something had to be done. He called Samuel into his office, and the employee entered cautiously, shifting his weight nervously. Ibrahim gestured for him to sit, and Samuel obeyed, hands clasped tightly, eyes wary. "Did I do something wrong, sir?" he asked quietly. The faint tremor in his voice betrayed the weight he carried even as he smiled politely. "No, Samuel," Ibrahim said, keeping his voice gentle. "I need to be honest with you. Last night, I followed you. Samuel's eyes widened, and his face went pale. Sir, I didn't mean to, he began, but Ibrahim raised a hand. It's not your fault. I should have noticed. I should have known. He reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope, placing it carefully in front of Samuel. Inside were documents, a salary increase, a family support stipend, and a promotion that recognized his hard work and dedication. Samuel's hands shook as he picked up the papers, disbelief etched into every line of his face. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Sir, why would you do this for me? Ibrahim leaned forward. Because no father should have to choose between feeding himself and feeding his children. Because I failed to see your struggle sooner. And because I want to change that, starting now. Samuel's eyes filled with tears. His chest heaved, but he swallowed back the sobs, overwhelmed by a mix of gratitude and disbelief. Ibrahim could see the years of exhaustion etched on Samuel's face, the silent battles fought in darkness. He knew that financial help alone was not enough. The following days were a whirlwind. Ibrahim personally visited Samuel's home with a small team, carrying tools, furniture, and supplies. They repaired the leaking roof, painted the walls, installed proper electricity, and filled the cupboards with food and essentials. Samuel's children stared in wonder as the apartment transformed from a place of struggle into a home. For the first time in years, laughter filled the rooms not as a brave front, but as genuine joy. The youngest daughter ran to Ibrahim, tugging at his sleeve. Are you the angel Papa prayed for? She asked with innocent hope. Ibrahim knelt beside her, tears in his eyes. No, little one, he said softly. Your father is the angel. I'm just someone who finally saw him. And in that moment, Ibrahim understood the weight of unseen struggles. He realized that leadership was not just about profits, deadlines, and schedules, but about seeing people, truly seeing them, and standing with them when life bore down hardest. From that day, Samuel's life changed. He became more than just an employee, he became a trusted leader in the company, a symbol of perseverance, and a man who could finally give his children the childhood they deserved. Ibrahim watched him from afar in awe, humbled by the quiet heroism of a man he had almost overlooked. Here's Scene 5 expanded, seamlessly continuing the story without a heading. Evenings in the Traoré household office now carried a different weight. Ibrahim often stayed late, not out of obligation, but because he found himself thinking about Samuel and his children. He remembered the fear, the hunger, the quiet dignity of a man raising 3 kids on his own, and he knew he could never return to the same detached way of running a company. Weeks passed, and Samuel's home transformed completely. The children no longer went to bed hungry or cold. Their laughter no longer masked hardship. It was genuine, echoing through the freshly painted walls, bouncing off the sturdy furniture Ibrahim had helped provide. Samuel himself began to breathe easier, shoulders straighter, eyes brighter. There was a confidence in him now that had nothing to do with promotions or money. It was the confidence that comes when a man knows his children are safe and loved. Ibrahim watched from a distance one afternoon as Samuel played with the kids in the living room. The smallest daughter climbed onto his back, giggling uncontrollably. Samuel twirled her around, lifting her in the air, and for the first time, Ibrahim saw pure joy on the man's face, unmasked by exhaustion, unshaped by struggle. The sight struck him deeply. This was what leadership and humanity could achieve when combined. Real change, not just numbers on a balance sheet. Later that day, Ibrahim walked into Samuel's office at the company. I want you to know something, he said quietly. Samuel looked up, alert. You've inspired me, not just me, the entire leadership team. Your dedication, your courage, it's a lesson we all need to remember. And I want everyone in this company to know that no effort, no sacrifice, goes unnoticed. Samuel blinked, overwhelmed. Sir, I never asked for recognition. I did what I had to for my family. And that's exactly why it matters, Ibrahim replied softly. Because there are people like you, quietly carrying the world on their shoulders, and it's our duty to lift them up, not let them struggle alone. Months later, Samuel's children thrived. They returned to school with clean uniforms and bright backpacks. Their laughter became contagious in the company corridors whenever Samuel told stories of their adventures. And every time Ibrahim saw them, he remembered the night he had followed Samuel and realized that heroism often hides in plain sight, in the silent sacrifices of those who never ask for help. One evening, as Ibrahim left the office, he looked back at Samuel's office and smiled. Samuel waved, and the children's laughter floated out of the windows behind him. Ibrahim's eyes welled up again, not with sorrow this time, but with pride, gratitude, and a deep sense of connection. He realized then that sometimes, following someone doesn't just reveal struggle or pain. Sometimes it reveals light, hope, and the quiet strength of the human heart. And that light is contagious, capable of transforming not just one life, but an entire world. Ibrahim walked home that night with a lighter step. The city's chaos no longer felt hollow. He had witnessed the power of love, sacrifice, and compassion, and he carried it with him into every decision, every meeting, every life he touched. And somewhere, in that small home, Samuel and his children slept peacefully, unaware that their father had not only survived, he had inspired a man to change his own world.